In this video, I'm going to go over a cheap and easy rear suspension mod that you can do to your Jiabaile 143 scale little RC car. And this is good for racing and drifting, depending on what you want to do with these little cars. The problem with these cars out of the box is that they don't have any rear suspension. It's really stiff. So when you're driving around and making hard turns, you know, left and right, the car will kind of hop and bounce, and it's really rough the way it drives. It comes with a little bit of suspension in the front. It's not a lot, but there's a tiny little spring at the top of the wheel hubs or the knuckles that give you a little bit of suspension. It's better than nothing, while the rear end has nothing. It's just two wheels attached to a solid metal rod with a little plastic gear glued to it that goes to the motor, and they don't move independently of each other, and there's just no spring to them whatsoever from the chassis. So the method I'm going to show you is not going to be a real like actual suspension for the rear tires, but it's going to help soften up or dampen that bounciness that you're going to get when you're driving the car out of the box. So it's better than nothing. Eventually I'll have to either 3D print a new chassis or redesign this rear end to where I can get some actual suspension back here. So I might be able to even like cut the chassis in half right here, and then add either a piece of plastic or a piece of metal to give it some springiness from the front half of the chassis, so the back end can move up and down independently from the front half of the chassis. So I don't know, I have a few different ideas I'm gonna try out. But if you want to have something instead of nothing, you can do this method, which I'm about to show you, and you can have at least this kind of suspension in the meantime, which is the easiest method you can do once you get yours out of the box. So I'll show you what I did. It's really easy. You just got to add a little spring into the back of the car where you mount the little back plate. So I'll demonstrate in the Skyline here. Now, most of them you don't have to like cut any plastic away, and you can just put the spring right here on this little this mounting area for the screw, and you can just set the spring right there and then compress it down with the chassis. But with this Skyline, I had to actually cut a little notch out to make room to put the spring down, because it actually the plastic was almost flush with this, so I couldn't put a spring there. So I just cut out like 6 millimeters or more of plastic so I could fit the spring. You don't want to cut down too far. You want it to be just long enough so the spring can at least stand up enough to still have room to spring the chassis up and down. So put this in here. All right, so once you get that spring in place there, then you just want to, there we go. You want the chassis to be grabbing half of the spring, while the other half of the spring is behind this mount for the screw. And then the best way to do this is to hold it tight, like compress the spring down in there, and hold it in place first. Get this little mounting plate, lined up with the screw. And then I would tighten the screw all the way down. So it's nice and tight, and then back off a few turns at a time to get the amount of springiness you're looking for. So obviously the more you back off on the screw, the more bounce you'll get. So if that's, if you want a lot or a little bit, that's just how much you unscrew the screw is going to give you what you're looking for. So that's better than nothing right there, as you can see. And that, like I said, it just makes the body have some suspension from the chassis, which is not the best method, but it's better than nothing, because this car will really bounce really hard when you're turning and stuff. So it's something, And now the springs, I mean, I just have a bunch of random springs laying around from projects. So like this spring right here, these are from my miniz MR03s for the front suspension, I think. So you want one that's wide enough to fit on that rod back there, but also the chassis can catch half of the spring. If the spring is too skinny, it won't work. It won't be able to grab onto the chassis, and it'll just like, you know, pop out of place all the time. So you need a spring wide enough to be able to grab the chassis and at least push the chassis up and down. And then like I said, I got those from some miniz ones, but I wouldn't suggest like buying those because those are kind of expensive, and you could probably find some cheaper ones at a similar size. This one's about 5 millimeter in diameter, so you need a minimum of like 5 millimeter in diameter for the spring. And then when it comes to the height, you're gonna need at least like 10 to 20 millimeters, somewhere in between there. Like the wltoys K969 springs I have right here from the stock suspension from the K969 or the K989 will also work as well. Even though they're a lot taller, when you compress them, they can get real short, so these are actually not bad for this mod as well. I actually use this one on the Porsche since the Porsche has a bigger body. And I dropped it. Yeah, be careful that you don't drop these springs on the ground. They're hard to find. So you just place this spring right over there, and this one actually works pretty well with this body. So let me just line this up real quick. Be careful when you're compressing it that it doesn't like dislodge and then shoot off, and then, you know, it's going to be hard to find again if you do lose it. So you kind of have to press the body down while also pressing the other side down to get it into place first, and then you mount the back plate on, and then you can start letting off for the amount of springiness you want, because if you do that too early, the spring can kind of not line up correctly and then get in the way. So just tighten it down to where it's nice and tight, and then just untwist it a few times, and then you'll get that little bit of springiness right there you're looking for. So I mean, that's the easiest thing I can come up with right now if you don't have any way of, like, you know, cutting the chassis up or 3D printing anything. You know, this is better than nothing. This is probably the best we're going to get for a lot of people that, you know, don't have the means of making their own suspension system. So this is not too bad. You know, it's better than nothing, and it'll get you by, and it'll help soften up the rear end when you're driving all over the place. And you'll notice a difference when you do this, that it's better than it was, you know, right out of the box. So this is definitely something I suggest you do for now, until we can figure out a better method to fix the suspension. Hopefully they come out with a version soon that actually has rear suspension that works instead of this stationary setup they have back here, at least something similar to the front. I'm debating on doing a rear wheel drive setup, or I'm not really debating, I'll probably do it, but there's a little differential in here that I'll probably put the diff in the back, and then take the same kind of setups, the front wheels, and put them in the back, and then have individual suspension in the rear end with that diff back here, and then just have no differential in the front since it'll be rear wheel drive. I'll get rid of the drive shaft that's in here, and then I'll have to design another front suspension system with these wheels. I'll just cut them off of that metal rod that's attaching them, and then have to probably 3D print something or whatever to put the wheels in front and, you know, make those work. But I don't know, I'm gonna go through a few different ideas and see what I come up with, and then once I figure out what I want to do, I will, you know, make a video for you guys to see, and then you guys can try to, you know, copy what I did, or you know, give you some ideas on something you might want to try. So that's all you really need to do to give this thing some suspension. There's really not much else to it. So just try to find some kind of springs laying around that are small enough to fit back there. You know, nothing too small, because like I said, they're too small, they won't work. So you got to have them wide enough to where they can grab the chassis, and then they won't just like shoot off when you try to like press it down or anything. So just keep that in mind. But yep, that's all there is to this video. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below, and I will see you guys in the next one.